Today, I'll be talking to you about the value of a connected workplace in the hybrid world of work. As Wouter said, I'm Michael Mazzarella. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at Proxyclick, based out of our Brussels headquarters. This is a subject that's very close to our hearts. It's pretty much the core of what we do. So hoping to present an insightful session for all of you here today. Just a little bit about the company that I represent. So Proxyclick, we date back to 2009, founded here in Brussels, and we started out with our core business being visitor management, and I think that's still very much where we add quite a lot of value. But our focus has broadened in no small part due to the COVID-19 epidemic to cover really cloud-based people flow management. And from today's presentation, you'll get a better idea of what that category actually is, the whole idea of people flow management. Just a couple of quick stats here about Proxyclick. So since our inception, we've seen well over 30 million visits created on our visitor management platform. That's spread across 102 different countries. And that's among customers that are speaking and using over 33 different languages. I think that's one of the key areas of focus for us, is being a solution that is internationally oriented, globally adept. And on that note of our global presence and global capabilities, so we've got three offices around the world here: headquarters in Belgium, U.S. headquarters in New York City. And then we've got a regional hub in Singapore covering the Middle East and Asia Pacific. Aside from that, because we very much believe in that hybrid working environment, we've got employees, working at a distance from a number of different countries that you see there on the board. So moving along, what is a connected workplace ecosystem? It sounds somewhat obvious, but it's actually not as obvious as it seems. So, effectively, what a connected workplace is a workplace wherein all of the different systems, solutions, and technologies are working in harmony to produce outputs and results for the organization or organizations involved. And here we're talking specifically about physical areas. And this is, it doesn't sound like rocket science, but this is actually very, very new, as you'll see in a couple of minutes here. Having a interconnected workplace is something that wasn't necessarily something that people were thinking about when they were selecting solutions. So technologies were selected on the basis of answering a challenge, and then there was a whole lot of other factors that weren't taken into account, primarily how well those technologies are going to interact and work in harmony with the other systems that have been put into place. So at the end of the day, it all boils down to people, and it boils down to their needs, their responsibilities, and their areas of expertise. So when we are getting active in projects that involve a connected workplace, when Proxyclick is out there selling what we do best, we're coming across a number of different personas. And the three primary personas you'll see here, and I think for a lot of attendees, these are going to be some familiar faces. Either you are one of these, you could be classified as one of these personas. You're maybe selling to one of these personas as well. Maybe you're having to deal with them and they're producing some challenges for you. Whatever the case may be, we've identified on our side these three main personas. And again, their needs, their expertise, their areas of concern are really going to be based off of what these people are hired, fired, or promoted to do. So looking at security without going into exhaustive detail here, people being physically safe, people being healthy. If something goes wrong with that, then it winds up falling on the plate of the company's security team. So they're always concerned about okay, this technology or this solution that we're putting into place, at the end of the day, does it make the premises more secure? Does it allow us to prove that we are doing our best to ensure that this is a healthy workplace? We're taking things like infectious diseases into account. This is what they're concerned with. And look, zooming in on COVID, this has just added a whole nother line of responsibility on this person's list of areas of expertise or responsibilities. Is you've got to make sure that you've got contingency plans for infectious diseases, that you're avoiding these these scenarios and these high risk situations. IT, what we've found from our experiences, our conversations with our customers, IT is very much concerned with this idea of harmony among systems and interoperability. If they approve a whole nother technology to be added into the existing stack, they want to make sure that that technology is going to play well with the others that are already there in place. Their reputation is very much on the line for which technologies actually get selected. So they want to make sure that it does what the salespeople are saying it's going to do, and it's going to do that at a reasonable cost. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, that it's going to fit well with all the other systems that it has to play with. And then lastly, operations, these are people that are concerned with ease of use. They want to make sure that, again, like the IT persona, that the solution is going to do what the salespeople have been selling them on. But then it's going to make their job easier at the end of the day. And very importantly, what we've seen in a lot of conversations, it's not going to put the job of these people at risk. That's something that people are very acutely aware of when we're talking about automation and the effects of digital transformation, specifically on workplace technologies. Zooming out and going back even before COVID times. So why do we want to build a connected workplace? So we know what it is, but what are the reasons why we want to build this? Okay, so if we think about the way that things were done in the past, we saw a big, huge technology stack for technologies related to people. On the other side, we saw technologies concentrating on these workspaces, and then there's a bit of a glue missing in between the two. Everything related to, the complex workflows that bring people into the places that they need to be, things that support people when they're outside of these premises. So when we talk about distance work and working from home, there didn't really seem to be too much interaction or interoperability between the two. It seemed to be two very siloed areas. On the people side, effectively, the essential question here is, how do I want to manage people coming on site? How do I support them when they're off site? That's another thing to take into account. But how do I manage people coming on site? And then, this is a whole thing that people weren't taking into account, is when I'm buying these technologies that are solving challenges, at the end of the day, are they compliant with local rules and regulations? Are they compliant with the policies of my organization, either on a local or a global level? From our conversations, we really didn't see this being taken into account as much as one would think. So we're slowly building out this new world of work, which is completely interconnected. It's automated, but despite the fact that there is this heavy focus on technology, it's people centric. You're automating the low value tasks. You're automating the things that people either didn't like to do or people weren't necessarily good at, and you're giving them more time to focus on the things that people are good at. Delivering a personalized experience. Making people feel welcome when they come into a workplace. Making people feel like they belong to the place that they're actually going into. These are the new tasks of people once the low value tasks have been fully automated by technology. So, we've got this people centric focus, and this is kind of falling into a number of different disciplines. So physical security, actual people management, so more in the domain of HR and people teams. Cybersecurity, there's an undercurrent of importance when it comes to cybersecurity throughout everything that we're doing with this interconnected workplace. And naturally, health and safety. It was important before COVID. It's even more important after COVID. So concretely, if we can share any insight into the conversations we've had with our, hundreds of customers, hundreds of partners, we're seeing some very common challenges pop out, and these are kind of boiled down on the people side and on the places side, and some of them link the two together. So everybody was subject to very strict lockdowns at one point over the past 18 months now almost, and now everybody's faced with that challenge of, okay, well, some people are going to want to go back to the office. How do we make that a smooth process? We have all these new rules and regulations in place. How do we make sure that we are fulfilling our obligations, but we're all the while making it an efficient and smooth process so that people feel like it's a positive experience? It's not creepy or uncomfortable to come back to the office, and technology has a role to play in that. Streamlining visitor management. This is, we're seeing this as phase 2 of return to work. So I think essential workers, were still at work. And I think for a lot of us white collar employees, it's easy to forget that while we were at home in our pajama pants working, that there were people that still had to go, onto the front lines every single day and be supported. Then in the next phase, we figured out, okay, well, non-essential workers, is it safe yet to bring them back? How do we bring them back? And then now we're getting into the last phase, which is kind of the luxury phase of people want to have visitors again. People want to allow salespeople to come in and sell to them. They want to interview job candidates face to face. There's a big thing that you can get out of an interview face to face that you can't necessarily over Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So we're now in a phase where visitor management is becoming important again. We are trying to transition to a hybrid workforce. This is the reality that we live with. Is companies can't necessarily say, okay, well, everybody has to be 100% in the office 100% of the time. Those companies aren't going to be able to attract talent, and they're certainly not going to be able to retain talent. And we've all kind of seen the firestorm that happens on social media as soon as a big, huge company says, actually, yeah, we're going to force everybody to go back to the office. The backlash is enormous. So hybrid working is just really the reality that we've got to live with. Secure, sensitive premises. When we go on the places side, we have to acknowledge that there are certain places out there that have stricter needs than other ones. Production sites, factories, government facilities. These are all places that have different elevated needs when compared to your just run-of-the-mill, everybody's welcome office. And all the while managing compliance. We have to make sure that we're following the rules, both legislative rules, but then also internal policies and practices. So this is going into what I've just described, but piece by piece, these are all the different areas of focus in the different disciplines where people are now demanding a fully connected ecosystem. Okay, so this is not rocket science. We all know that hybrid work is the new normal. It is imposing actively a need for optimized tech solutions. And for those of you that haven't been familiar with the term stack, this is something that we have to live with. We have to constantly be thinking about the stack. What is the hierarchy of technologies? How well do they talk to one another? Is this a harmonious stack, or is this a Jenga tower where each piece is very sensitive, and if one piece isn't working well with the others, then the whole thing falls down. And this is not just blabbing that I'm doing here. This is backed up by data. This is backed up by both market research, but then also our own findings from our own day-to-day conversations. 77% agree that technology is critical for landlords to manage their business. I think we all would be surprised if that number was anything less than 77%. 85% believe that technology is key to planning the return to the workplace. So people figure out that, okay, we're not going to be able to manage this with Excel sheets. We're not going to be able to manage this with paper clipboards. We're not going to be able to manage this with armies of security personnel and reception staff. We've got to lean on technology for this. And 96% see the value in having unified processes for managing the flow of people. So that's actually quite surprising. Is even if we think about more antiquated companies or people that aren't as forward thinking, between that 85% and 96%, we're seeing the connection between people saying yes, technology is very important, and yeah, the technology's actually got to talk to one another. And this is the new part, and that's the really the astounding number there. So this is just based off of our own conversations with our customers, understanding what their needs are. Zooming in on features. So we try to keep things high level. We try to talk about value, but here we wanted to see, okay, just on a practical feature level, what are the things that are important to people? And a lot of these are going to be recurring themes in your own conversations day to day. If you've managed return to work projects, if you've already done a couple of, if you've been involved in a couple of successful ones, a lot of these things are maybe new in a COVID context, not necessarily something we would have seen before the pandemic. Some of these were always important. We just didn't get around to them. Some of these have been old standards that are just, showing their faces again. So, some that I want to highlight here: temperature reading, 39%. That seems to be geographically, geography seems to play a role in that. So, seems to be particularly important in the U.S., Asia Pacific, parts of the Middle East, and Africa. The need to scan somebody's temperature before you enter in a building. I just got back from South Africa, where I had a distance, a wireless thermometer held in front of my head every single where I went. Occupancy management. So, okay, we've got to reduce the total occupancy of the building to ensure distancing. So we got to make sure that if we set it at no more than 30%, we can ensure that only 30% of our workforce based out of that workplace is going to be allowed to come in. Access control. So when we're talking about visitors, we can't always have them escorted. When we're talking about our employees, is it still safe to be using physical badges and things like that? So there's a lot of conversations going on around access control and the role that plays. Not so much of a surprise there. We're talking about the physical barriers. So we're talking about getting people back into work and getting them past these physical barriers in a healthy and safe way. And then some new ones: license plate recognition. I mean, the demand for smart parking systems that absolutely shot through the roof, because it's going to be a long time before people are comfortable with public transportation again. So we've seen an enormous demand for that in Europe. Maybe not the best development from an environmental standpoint, but this is something that we need to be thinking about and accommodating. And I just love this visual. People, places, whole bunch of wires. It's all got to be connected and working together. Okay, so we figured out the what, we well understand the why. So how do we actually go about building something like this? Okay, so the key considerations: keep things simple, don't overcomplicate things. Understand where the focus area is, what sort of groups need to be involved, for whom this is not necessarily relevant. Determine that in advance. Too many cooks can spoil the soup. Understand the scope of the project. You're not necessarily going to solve all of the smart office requirements in a first phase, especially not in a return to work phase. So, keep it simple. Understand, what you can plausibly expect out of a project like this. assess your processes to create efficiency. Usually this is something that people do well. People have a very good idea of what their internal processes are, what the internal rules are, the things that they have to be compliant with. Where they struggle is, how do we leverage technology to make sure that we can actually fulfill our promises on those processes, rules, and regulations. People really do struggle in that area. Understand the similarities in the versus the differences in your people's needs. So not everybody is the same. Not every persona type is going to have the same sort of working preferences. Hybrid working is going to affect different groups of people differently. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and you stand to really diminish your impact or your results in providing a positive and welcoming workplace if you try to paint everybody with the same brush. Aim for mobile and touchless. We see, the number of functionalities that a smartphone has is increased exponentially. I think we're all familiar with that meme of, the electronic store catalog from 1990, and all of these different products were covered by, are things that you can now find in a smartphone, whether it be a calculator or, a telephone. All of these different things are now encompassed within a smartphone, and it's not stopping. So what we're seeing is even something like a key fob or an access badge, that's finding itself in a smartphone now, where it wasn't necessarily before. So you do want to keep that mobile focus. That's the way that things are going. Do not overlook training burdens. I think of all the dots on this page, if we remember only one of them, please keep this one in mind, is you can get the best technology, you can have the best implementation plan for that technology, but if you don't properly educate people on not only how to use it, but why it's important for them, why it's going to make their lives easier as opposed to harder, then you really stand a high risk of having your entire project go belly up. Do not ignore the human element. Do not ignore the fact that people are creatures of habit. You really need to be thinking about that. A plan is only as good as its execution. And share data and knowledge. Once you put these technologies in place, you're going to be collecting data on things that you weren't necessarily able to collect data on in the past. And this is a huge advantage, because your smart office is going to be something that is a self-regulating or a self-correcting process. Putting the technologies into place is going to give you insights that you didn't necessarily have before. Those insights are going to help you to make better decisions about making a better, more cost-effective, more efficient workplace. And don't ever stop thinking about the future. Like, we're very focused on the here and now. We all have tight deadlines. People have to get back in the offices. Our inboxes are absolutely crammed with inquiries from customers and partners and people needing to put these projects in place. Let's not get blinders on and stop thinking about, all right, well, once we get past this return to work, what's the next phase? What's happening after this? How does it work in practice? This is something I would encourage everybody here. If you aren't already familiar with Proxyclick, go on our website, request a demo, see for yourself how it works. But with the time that we have remaining, I just want to talk about a very relevant metaphor or comparison that we can make between the way that this process works at an actual office and an industry that's been using this technology for or this process, this flow for several years now. We all remember taking airplanes. We all remember back in the day when you would have to go to the airport and do your check-in all there, and somebody would, very nicely put a tag on your bag for you and take care of all this stuff for you. And we know that changed recently. So within the past, I would say 3 to 5 years. When you book a ticket, airlines are now sending you an email that says, okay, it's 24 hours before your flight. Go ahead and start your online check-in. And they will send you an email with a link. You'll click on that link. You'll read all the rules. You'll be asked a bunch of questions. They show you that page that has all the bombs and the guns and the knives to make sure that you don't take any of that stuff on the airplane. There may be a couple of documents that you may need to upload and provide. So, this is something that airlines have really embraced. And the reason that airlines have embraced it is that they wanted to reduce their staffing costs at the airport. They're very margin oriented. So they said, we can't have armies of check-in people at the airports anymore. It's just too high of a cost. But they still all the while wanted to improve the customer experience. How do you improve the customer experience at the start? You ensure that when they get to the airport, they don't have to go through all these processes and checks and steps, that they don't have to wait through queues when they're at the airport itself. Isn't it great if you could just dump your bag at the check-in counter, take your boarding pass out of your smartphone, get through the gates, go through security, and then sit down and then watch a movie or listen to a podcast with your remaining time? This is something that airlines have embraced. This is something that is now relevant to the workplace and a number of other spaces that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. And this is the bread and butter of what Proxyclick is doing for organizations. Okay, so quite a lot of buttons here. Here we just had a visualization of what that looks like, from an actual person using it. But I want to use the very, small amount of time that we've got remaining to address any sort of questions or concerns.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions for you, Michael, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First one, can PropTech support business to cut the costs or to generate revenue? What do you think?
I think the key area of value, and naturally, this is something we have to think about in phases. Rome was not built in a day, and we need to focus on the immediate value. And I think the immediate value, the opportunity that stands before us today is with cost cutting. There's obvious cost cutting opportunities on the personnel side. That's not to say that we're going to get involved in huge layoffs and a whole bunch of people losing their jobs, but we're shifting the focus. And this is a evolution that's already been going on, is that we're moving from a focus on, human receptionists to a more of a concierge experience where it's really personalized and you feel very welcome. So you're able to reduce the staffing costs and then increase the value provided by the people that do remain. The same thing for security guards. Security guards, are costly when they are handing a clipboard to people, getting people to fill that out, checking a badge, things like that. What security people are good at is, being the eyes and ears in the room and looking for those sort of strange behaviors and anticipating security threats, and then also making people feel safe. And they do that by interacting with people. So I think the immediate opportunity for organizations is in cost cutting. So with the staffing examples that I mentioned, but then also in tool consolidation. We see a lot of overlap in the different technologies that companies are using. So you can save quite a lot by consolidating those tools and those solutions on the basis of their functionalities. There's a lot of overlapping functionalities out there. It's a great question.
And are PropTechs good in telling this story? Because you see a lot of PropTech solutions and they tell everything about their technology, but you mentioned like where the real benefits are.
Yeah, and I think this is something that Proxyclick, we've gotten very good at this. But if I look at our peers, if I look at our competition, if I look at other companies out there, technology companies have this curse of always, you're proud of the technology that you build and you talk about all the things it can do. Look at this beautiful car that I built, and I'm going to talk to you about all the things that it can do. But we have to understand the audience. We're not thinking about our audience, and our audience is, in many cases, come from a very traditional industry. And people will not wake up, or people will not pick up the phone, or people will not listen to you unless you're talking about the things that actually matter to them. And what matters to them is, how is this going to help me save money? Because if we look at commercial real estate, the rents are a problem. So rent reliability is an issue. Companies are cutting costs with their landlords. So these companies have to constantly be adding value. So I think, PropTech, we have a responsibility to change the way that we sell.
Yeah, cool. Well, I totally agree with you. What would be the best to invest in PropTech from an external for external suppliers, or to build it on their own?
Absolutely. In every case, it's to invest in external suppliers, sometimes through the help of a systems integrator, or particularly in this space, if we look at facilities management service providers, these companies can be active in bundling relevant technologies to make a consolidated offering to their customers, to make it easy for the customers. So the customers don't have to go, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and they all have to be able to work together. So you can rely on your your service providers to help you in this. But I think the quagmire or the trap that a lot of companies get involved in is thinking, okay, well, we have very specific rules and requirements, we have very specific needs, and then thinking that automatically means that you need customization in the technologies that you buy. And luckily, I think in Europe, we were a bit of a laggard in this area, where we were still relying on custom-built technologies, but we are finally starting to see a new generation of IT buyers come in, and people that know that you want to go with best in breed, and only in very, very specific situations do you want to go with custom building.
Yeah, and what would be the key benefit for a connected workplace? One that our audience really should, blown away, like we really need to have this, like a must-have, and not like just a nice-to-have.
Well, I think the immediate benefit, or the most visible benefit, is that it's technology that doesn't feel like technology. It becomes a habit. It is so easy to use that it becomes a part of our day-to-day habits, just as we would put our bag in a cubby, or we would get a cup of coffee. It's going to become that kind of habit where, I think if we look at users of a workspace, or people within a workspace, their experience of technology or PropTech in the past has been, I got to log into this system, I got to log into this system, I forgot my password for this one. So
how do we do that? Yeah, that's not an easy solution.
Exactly. It's technology that doesn't feel like technology when you're using it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Michael. That was really an amazing half an hour. I really liked to talk to you, and I like to gain your insights. So thank you very much, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Enjoy your day in Belgium. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.